The desert sun, a molten eye, glares down upon your arrival, scorching the very air you breathe. Dust, fine as ground bone, coats the lenses of your sunglasses, a gritty film that mirrors the weariness etched around your own eyes. The wind, a dry, insistent whisper, lifts the hem of your coat, carrying the scent of parched earth and distant, decaying things. You step from the patrol vehicle, your boots crunching on the loose gravel outside the border patrol station in the desert, a stark concrete block against an endless canvas of ochre and rust. This place feels like the edge of the world, a forgotten corner where shadows stretch long and truths are buried deep. Your gaze sweeps across the desolate landscape, taking in the corrugated metal shacks in the distance, the skeletal saguaros standing sentinel, their arms reaching towards an indifferent sky. It is a familiar companion, born of years spent sifting through the wreckage of human depravity, a constant reminder of the fragile line between order and chaos. A uniformed officer, young and visibly shaken, approaches, his face a mask of grim determination beneath the brim of his hat. "Detective Reid." He greets, his voice tight, "It's bad." You nod, a curt acknowledgement. "Show me." He leads you past a series of parked vehicles. Their surfaces dull with dust, towards a section of the station's perimeter fence, just beyond the floodlights. Yellow tape, a flimsy barrier against the stark reality, flutters listlessly in the breeze. Beyond it, a scene unfolds that makes the desert's harshness seem almost merciful. The victim lies sprawled on the cracked earth, a grotesque still life. He is young, too young, perhaps in his early 20s, dressed in a faded t-shirt and jeans. His face, what remains of it, is a ruin. Your eyes, honed by countless similar spectacles, pick out the details, the frantic claw marks in the dirt nearby, the single, cheap silver chain around his neck, now tarnished with grime. This isn't just a killing, it's an annihilation. No ID on him yet, the officer states, his voice hushed. But a preliminary search of his pockets turned up a small baggie of what looks like meth, and a burner phone. A low-level dealer, then. The city's grimy underbelly, even here, finds its way into the desolate reaches. You crouch, your movements fluid despite the ache in your knees, a constant companion since that last case, the one that never quite closed. You observe the body from a distance, respecting the scene, letting your eyes absorb the silent narrative. The weapon, you note, is absent. No obvious shell casings. The wounds are blunt force, savage and repeated, suggesting a fury that far exceeds the simple removal of a rival. A forensic technician, masked and gloved, kneels a few feet away, meticulously photographing the scene. Your gaze drifts, searching for anything amiss, anything that doesn't fit the brutal, simple picture of a street-level drug dispute gone wrong. The victim's hands are open, palms upward, almost in supplication, yet there's no defensive bruising on his forearms, no sign of a struggle to ward off the blows. The officer shakes his head. Negative. Our patrols found him at first light. Looks like it happened sometime during the night. You rise, the desert dust clinging to your trousers. The anonymity of the victim, the sheer savagery of the attack, the desolate location, it all feels too deliberate. Too clean, in its own horrific way. A ghost of a memory flickers at the edge of your consciousness, a fleeting image of a small, bright red ribbon, lost years ago in a different kind of wilderness. You push it down, as you always do, but the phantom ache remains. Bag everything, you instruct the technician, your voice regaining its usual edge. Every speck of dirt, every fiber. And check for anything that might have been left behind by the perpetrator, not just the victim. Your eyes narrow, sweeping the horizon once more. The vast, empty expanse of the desert stretches out, indifferent to the violence that has unfolded upon its face. But you know better. Nothing truly disappears out here. This low-level dealer, brutally extinguished, feels like a single, frayed thread in a much larger, more intricate tapestry. And you, Reid, are about to pull on it. The city's embrace, a tangle of steel and neon, pulls you from the desert's stark embrace. Yet, the memory of that desolate expanse, the fallen figure against the unforgiving sand, clings to you like the fine dust that still coats your boots. You know the desert holds secrets, not just bones, and the city, for all its clamor, is merely a more crowded vault. The silence you carried from the crime scene still hums in your ears, a dissonant note in the urban symphony. You find yourself in the cool, sterile confines of the city facility where bodies tell their final, grim tales. The air is sharp with antiseptic, a cold balm against the raw edges of your thoughts. The examiner, a woman whose gaze has plumbed the depths of countless human endings, gestures to the form beneath the pristine sheet. Her movements are economical, her voice a low, steady drone as she peels back the layers of the deceased, revealing the brutal truth. Initial assessment, she begins, her gloved fingers tracing the contours of the victim's chest, indicates multiple stab wounds, consistent with a frenzied attack. A street-level dispute, perhaps. Nothing particularly novel. Her words are like a dull blade, mirroring the initial, dismissive narrative. Minute punctures. Almost invisible to the untrained eye, scattered around the primary trauma sites. Not from the primary weapon, certainly. And the edges of the main wounds. Surprisingly clean for such a violent episode. Almost too clean. Your eyes narrow, following the path of her gaze. They speak of a precision that belies the chaos of a street fight. And further, the examiner adds, turning to a monitor displaying complex spectral graphs, we've detected traces of a compound. Not on our usual registry for street-grade narcotics or common poisons. It's subtle. It expedited the end, yes, but quietly. This isn't the crude, impulsive act you'd been led to believe. This is a deliberate art, a quiet orchestration. The examiner's words echo the desert's silent testimony, nothing truly disappears without leaving a trace. The desert calls you back, a silent siren song. The city's sprawl shrinks in your rearview mirror as you drive, the engine a steady pulse against the growing thrum of your own intuition. The sun beats down, relentless, baking the landscape into shades of ochre and rust. You pull up to the scene, now stripped of its official markers, a forgotten tableau under the indifferent sky. Your gaze, sharpened by the examiner's revelations, sweeps the ground. Every rock, every shard of scrub, every ripple in the sand takes on new meaning. You walk the perimeter, your steps measured, your breath held, searching for the anomaly, the discord in the desert's natural harmony. You recall the initial sweep, the hurried reports, the rush to categorize this as an open and shut case. And then you see it. Not on the surface, not obvious, but hidden. Your eyes fall upon a particular rock, one you dismissed before as merely another piece of the endless terrain. It's not the rock itself, but what lies beneath it, a barely perceptible disturbance in the packed sand. You kneel, pushing aside the stone, and expose a faint, almost invisible discoloration. Not blood, not oil, but something else. A residual trace of a different substance, perhaps, a faint sheen that catches the light like dew on a spiderweb. Then, you spot it. Woven into the rough texture of the rock, almost indistinguishable from the grains of sand, is a single, incredibly thin strand of metallic fiber. It glints, catching the sun's harsh brilliance, a silent, alien thread in the rugged tapestry of the desert. Too fine for typical clothing, too precise for random debris. It's a thread from a different loom, a piece of the city's intricate machinery dropped into the wilderness. This isn't a fluke. This is a signature. You stand before the captain, a man whose patience wears thinner than old paper, his face a landscape of weary lines. He sits behind a desk piled high with folders, a fortress of bureaucracy. Captain, you begin, your voice steady, laying out the examiner's preliminary report in the small, almost insignificant metallic fiber, carefully preserved in an evidence bag. This isn't a simple drug hit. The examiner found anomalies. A compound, precise punctures. And at the scene, I found this. You pushed the bag across the desk. This isn't random. This speaks to an art, a precision that doesn't fit the narrative of a street-level dealer's demise. The captain, a heavy man with tired eyes, barely glances at the bag. He waves a dismissive hand, the gesture of practiced dismissal of inconvenient truths. Reid, we have a suspect in custody. A known rival. He confessed. The weapon's been found, recovered near the dump site. This is a clear-cut case. We're already filing the paperwork. His words are clipped, final, pushing you back, closing the door on your burgeoning suspicions. Don't go conjuring phantoms where there are none. Forensics will write off that fiber as contamination, or a fluke. The examiner's findings will be attributed to post-mortem changes or overlooked details. You're seeing patterns in static. Close the book, Reid. Move on. His gaze, heavy with the weight of procedure and the desire for quick resolutions, holds yours. It's a silent command to conform, to accept the easy answer. But the metallic fiber, small and unassuming, burns a hole in your mind, a silent testament to a truth far more complex, far more dangerous, than any of them are willing to see. The tension in the room thickens, an unspoken challenge hanging between you and the captain. The metallic fiber, a sliver of stubborn truth, still pricks at the edges of your thoughts, a counterpoint to the easy narrative the superior so readily embraced. His gaze, a heavy cloak of expectation, still clings, but your mind, a restless tide, pulls against the current of convenience. You see the discarded file on the desk, the one marked closed, and a quiet fury, cold and precise, begins to gather within you. Back in the sterile glow of your small office, the city's hum a distant thrum, you retrieve the evidence bag. The fiber, impossibly fine, glints under the desk lamp. It whispers of deliberate placement, of a meticulousness that belies the street-level brutality of the scene. This isn't the sloppiness of a panicked dealer, it's the signature of something far more controlled. You open the digital archives, a cavern of forgotten histories, searching for the anomaly. Your fingers dance across the keyboard, a familiar rhythm. You're not looking for exact matches, not yet. You're hunting for resonance, for that faint echo of the unusual, the detail dismissed by others as insignificant. A young woman vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a single, odd clue, a minuscule fragment of a rare, high-tensile polymer, found tangled in the threads of her jacket. It was an aerospace-grade material, utterly out of place, utterly unexplainable, and quickly discounted by the lead investigator as incidental debris. But you remember it. You remember the way the senior detective, a man burdened by caseloads and cynicism, had waved it away, eager to move on. You pull up the archived reports, a ghost in the machine. The digital files load slowly, each pixel a step back in time. There it is, a grainy photograph of the polymer fragment, almost identical in its alien texture, its improbable strength, to the metallic fiber now resting in your palm. This isn't coincidence. This is a pattern, woven with invisible threads across the city's underbelly. You cross-reference the two cases. The current victim, a small-time drug peddler. Two vastly different lives, yet linked by this impossible, precise detail. The meticulousness, the almost surgical placement of the foreign material. It speaks of a message, a quiet mark left by an architect, not a brawler. Reid, a voice cuts through your concentration. The captain standing framed in your doorway, his silhouette a wall of disapproval. Still chasing ghosts? You look up, the lamp catching the glint in your eye. Just connecting dots. Captain. The dots are connected, Reid. The dealer was hit by a rival. Case closed. We have other priorities. His tone is a blunt instrument, designed to shut down inquiry. This fiber, you hold up the evidence bag, the metallic threaded tiny beacon. It's identical in its improbability to a fragment found in the Elias case, 5 years ago. Aerospace grade, Captain. Dead end. You're wasting resources. Focus on the present, Reid. The brass wants this cleaned up. His gaze is a challenge, a silent command to fall in line. But you see past the surface. You see the subtle shift in his eyes, the almost imperceptible tensing of his shoulders. It's not just a desire for efficiency, it's a veiled warning. Someone, somewhere, does not want these two cases linked. I need access to the original evidence from the Elias case, you state, your voice level, unyielding. Physical evidence. It was stored off-site, wasn't it? Besides, that evidence might be gone. Records are spotty after so long. He's not denying its existence, merely making its retrieval difficult. The obstruction is subtle, a bureaucratic snarl designed to deter. I'll make the drive, you reply, already gathering your coat, your determination a steel rod in your spine. And I'll find those records. You feel the weight of his stare on your back as you walk out. It only fuels your resolve. The city lights blur into streaks as you drive, the engine a low growl against the night. The thought of a larger, organized network, operating with such precision, sends a shiver through you. You pass billboards advertising distant casinos, then nothing but scrub brush and the skeletal remains of forgotten fences. The isolation is palpable, a stark contrast to the city's relentless pulse. As you near the destination, the landscape transforms into an endless expanse of ochre and rust, punctuated by the occasional sentinel cactus. You are far from the city's familiar labyrinths, but the threads of this intricate web, you realize, stretch even here, across the barren, unforgiving landscape. The ghosts of the past, you feel, are waiting. The thought coils in your gut, a cold knot tightening with each mile. Hours melt into the darkness, the radio a silent companion against the howl of the wind whipping past the windows. The air grows sharp, carrying the scent of dust and distant mesquite. It's a stark, functional structure, concrete and steel against the ancient earth, surrounded by a fence that glints faintly under the security lights. You park, the gravel crunching under the tires, and step out into the crisp, dry air. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow on the faces of the agents, their expressions weary but alert. A uniformed agent, a familiar face from a joint task force years ago, offers a curt nod. Reid. Especially anything that came through the old Coyote Pass route. The agent's brow furrows. Coyote Pass? That route's been mostly dead for months. Too risky, too many eyes, but there was a bust last week, small one, near the old mining road. A few mules, nothing big. We got some encrypted comms, a couple of burner phones, and a ledger. On a steel table lies the evidence from the bust. The ledger is a slim, unassuming notebook, its cover scuffed. You pull on gloves and open it. The entries are coded, a jumble of numbers and single letters, but a pattern emerges. Not drug quantities, but financial transactions. Large sums. And then, a series of names, not of known dealers, but of shell corporations, registered to addresses in the city's most affluent districts. One name, in particular, makes your breath catch: Sterling Holdings. Sterling Holdings. It's a conglomerate with deep roots in the city, touching everything from real estate development to private security. Its chairman, a man named Marcus Thorne, is a titan of industry, untouchable. Revered. He's a frequent donor to political campaigns, a fixture at charity galas. The idea of him being involved in a low-level drug operation seems absurd, yet the ledger is undeniable. And these shell companies. They lead straight to the top. The agent whistles softly. Thorne? You're saying Marcus Thorne is tied to this? The ledger says his company is. This isn't just a case anymore, it's a dismantling. As you examine the other items, a small, intricate wooden bird, carved from mesquite, catches your eye. It's crudely made but distinctive, with tiny, almost imperceptible etchings on its base. Your sister, barely a teenager, her small hands clumsy with a whittling knife, trying to carve a bird from a piece of driftwood she'd found by the river. She'd always struggled with the details, her small, uneven etchings a signature of her youthful ambition. The memory hits you like a physical blow, a sudden, sharp pain in your chest. The small wooden bird in your gloved hand, its rough texture, the specific, almost childish way the wings are rendered. It's too similar. Too eerily familiar. Your sister's unfinished bird had been found in her room after she vanished, placed carefully on her nightstand, a silent, mocking farewell. Before you can fully process the jolt of this discovery, your phone vibrates. An unknown number. You hesitate, then answer. The voice on the other end is smooth, cultured, and utterly devoid of warmth. Detective Reid, the voice purrs, you're a long way from home. Digging in places you shouldn't be. Some holes are best left undisturbed. Who is this, you demand, your grip tightening on the phone. The wooden bird feels like a lead weight in your other hand. Just a messenger, the voice continues, a low, insidious hum. You have a niece, don't you? A bright, charming little girl. Your niece. The daughter of your missing sister, the one you've sworn to protect. This isn't a vague warning, it's a direct threat, a violation of the unspoken rules. They know about you, about your family. They've gone too far. Stay away from her, you snarl into the phone, your voice tight with suppressed fury. The deeper you dig, the more fragile things become. Remember, some birds never return to the nest. The line goes dead. The wooden bird, the ledger, the threat against your niece, it all coalesces into a terrifying clarity. The ghost of your sister's disappearance, a wound that never truly healed, now bleeds anew, staining this new mystery with the bitter taste of your past. You are in too deep to turn back now. The deadline hummed with the ghosts of threats. You stood amidst the quiet hum of your own apartment, the receiver a cold weight against your ear. The desert winds still whistled in your memory, carrying the stranger's chilling promise. Your niece. The words were a brand, searing away any doubt that this was anything but a direct challenge, a venomous, personal war. The wooden bird, perched on the edge of the kitchen counter, felt less like a relic and more like a taunt. You snatched it up, the name on the caller ID a familiar, weary weight, the captain. Reid. My office. Now. His voice, usually a gruff rumble, was flat, devoid of its usual edge. A bad sign. The city outside your window was a blur of steel and glass as you navigated the familiar routes. He sat behind his cluttered desk, a file open before him, his gaze fixed on nothing in particular. The air thickened with unspoken words. Sit, he commanded, not looking up. You took the worn leather chair opposite him, the springs groaning under your weight. The silence stretched, taut as a piano wire. Finally, his eyes, etched with a fatigue that went beyond mere sleeplessness, met yours. It's done, Reid. You're off the case. He pushed a single sheet of paper across the desk. Your name, bold and official, stared back at you, followed by the word, suspended. Unauthorized interference. Insubordination. Disregard for established protocol. He recited the charges as if reading from a tombstone. They came down hard. From high up. Said you were disrupting a sensitive, ongoing federal investigation. His voice dropped, a rare hint of genuine concern breaking through the officialese. They want you out, Reid. Buried. You're getting too close to something they don't want seen." The words were an icy torrent, yet they only solidified the resolve hardening within you. This wasn't a defeat, it was a confirmation. The dead dealer, the ledger, the threats against my family, that's not federal investigation collateral, Captain. That's a target. He sighed, running a hand over his thinning hair. Doesn't matter. You're a ghost now. No badge, no gun, no authority. Go home, Reid. Protect your niece. That's all you can do. He stood, signaling the end of the conversation. Don't make this worse. You rose, the chair scraping loudly across the linoleum. The weight of the suspension, the official severing of your ties, was a liberation. It meant no rules, no bureaucracy, no chain of command to impede your hunt. You nodded, a grim understanding passing between you and the captain. Understood. Back on the street, the city's roar felt different, sharper. You were an outsider now, a phantom in your own hunting grounds. He owed you, for a quiet word you'd once put in, saving him from a longer stretch. You found him later, hunched over a lukewarm cup of coffee in a greasy spoon diner, his eyes darting nervously around the room. He was a creature of habit and fear. You slid into the booth opposite him, the worn vinyl sighing. They cut me loose, you stated, no preamble. No badge, no backup. Just a debt called in. His eyes widened, a flicker of genuine alarm replacing his usual streetwise cynicism. That bad, huh? Higher-ups getting itchy. He stirred his coffee, a spoon clinking against ceramic. What you need? Information. The ledger. The network. A carving. The runner's gaze dropped to his cup, his hand trembling slightly. Wooden bird. Yeah. Heard about that. A mark of passage, they call it, for certain. Shipments. Means it's protected. Hands off. Comes through a specific channel. He paused, chewing on his lip, clearly debating the risk. The main funnel point. It's not what you'd expect. Not a private dock. It's a blind spot. A place no one looks too hard because it's supposed to be secure. Where, you pressed, your voice tight. Far out. Middle of nowhere. They run a tight ship there, official-like. But there's a back door. A specific shift. A specific vehicle. They push the goods right through the official checkpoints, under the noses of the honest agents. He swallowed hard. It's how they move everything, Reid. Drugs, cash. Even people. The real architects, the ones at the top, they set it all up. They own that station, some of the people in it. The sheer audacity of it. Using the very apparatus designed to prevent illicit crossings as a conduit. This was beyond a simple drug ring, it was a deep, festering corruption. When, you demanded. Tonight. Midnight. A delivery. They're moving a big one. Something sensitive. He looked around again, his paranoia reaching a fever pitch. That wooden bird. It's the signal. Means the shipment is from the very top. Don't go, Reid. It's a trap. You ignored his plea. A place of supposed security, now revealed as the heart of the serpent. This was the lead. This was where the threads converged. This was where you would find the true architects. Hours passed, the road a ribbon of black unwinding beneath your headlights. The wind whipped at your clothes, carrying the faint murmur of unseen activity. The station was a low-slung, utilitarian structure, bathed in the unforgiving glare of floodlights. Patrol vehicles sat idle, their antennas reaching for the stars. You circled the perimeter, a ghost in the desert, until you found it, a section of fence, ostensibly secure, but with a subtle weakness, a loose latch on a rarely used gate near a maintenance shed. It was almost too easy. A deliberate oversight, perhaps, for those who knew where to look. The distant clatter of a heavy truck engine, the low murmur of voices from a dimly lit warehouse at the rear of the station. This was not routine. Through a grimy window, you saw them, 3 figures, their faces obscured by the harsh light and distance, standing around a large, flatbed truck. One of them, a tall, imposing man, held a small object in his hand, turning it over. Even from this distance, you recognized the distinctive, carved lines. The wooden bird. The architects were here. You needed to get closer, to see their faces, to hear their words. Something metallic and sharp. This wasn't just a drop point. This was a processing center. And you were walking into the lion's den. The desert night swallowed your vehicle whole, the engine a low growl against the vast silence. Headlights cut through the ink, revealing only the endless expanse of sand and scrub. It rose from the dust like a concrete monolith, sterile and imposing, a beacon of supposed order in the desolate expanse. A place of security, now revealed as the heart of the serpent. This was the lead. This was where the threads converged. You pulled into the gravel lot, the tires crunching like broken glass under the weight of your intent. The air, thin and cold, tasted of dust and distant diesel. No other vehicle stirred. Inside, the reception area was austere, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A young officer, barely out of uniform academy, looked up from a screen, his eyes wide with surprise. "Can I help you, detective?" he managed, his voice a reedy tremor. "Reid," you stated, your voice gravelly, "I need to speak with the commanding officer." His uniform was crisp, his bearing authoritative. He extended a hand, his grip firm, almost reassuring. "Detective Reid. To what do we owe the pleasure? Not often we see city brass out here." A practiced smile, a glimmer of something you couldn't quite place, played on his lips. "I'm investigating the recent disappearances," you began, cutting to the chase, "and the homicide of the dealer. Information led me here. Specifically, to the logistics of transport, the movement of certain assets." You watched his eyes for any flicker, any shift in the carefully constructed facade. The commanding officer's smile tightened, a fraction. "Disappearances? We deal with border crossings, detective. Illegals, drugs, sure. But disappearances. That's not our purview." He gestured towards a small, windowless office. "Come in, let's talk privately." You followed, your senses sharpened, every detail absorbed. The office was Spartan, a metal desk, a worn chair, a map of the border region tacked to the wall. The air was heavy, stale. "My information suggests otherwise," you pressed, leaning against the doorframe, not quite closing it. "Large-scale operations require infrastructure. And this station, strategically placed, handles a lot of traffic. Too much of the wrong kind, perhaps." He settled behind his desk, his gaze unwavering. "We follow protocol, detective. Every manifest, every vehicle, every detainee is accounted for." He paused, then leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Look, I know you're tenacious. Heard stories. But you're barking up the wrong tree here. This is a secure facility." It felt out of place, too isolated. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "That's a serious accusation, Reid." "Is it?" You pushed off the doorframe, moving towards the terminal. "Tell me, commanding officer, how often do you have ghost manifests? Cargo that appears and disappears without a trace?" Or perhaps, the movement of people who are never officially processed? He rose, his posture stiffening. I think you've misunderstood, Detective. You're overstepping. His hand moved subtly to a button under his desk. It was connected to a separate, internal network, not the standard government system. A quick series of keystrokes. The login screen flickered. The real business. You saw a sequence of numbers, a familiar code from the dealer's encrypted phone. You typed it in. The screen burst to life, displaying a labyrinth of nested folders: logistics, financials, personnel. 1. Folder, starkly labeled manifest_redacted, caught your eye. You opened it. A torrent of data scrolled past: dates, names, locations. Not just drugs, but people. Names, ages. Young women, mostly. Your breath hitched. This was it. This was the network. A ghost from your own past. Get away from that. The commanding officer's voice cracked like a whip. Two other officers, burly and grim-faced, appeared in the doorway, their hands resting on their holsters. The air crackled with a sudden, dangerous electricity. It's all here, you stated, your voice flat, numb, your eyes still scanning the data. The entire operation. The routes, the payments, the names of those you've helped disappear. You saw a ledger, cross-referencing dates of assets moved with substantial, illicit bank transfers. This was the critical evidence, undeniable and damning. You shouldn't have seen that, Reid. The commanding officer's voice was low, lethal. You're a long way from city limits. Things happen out here. Accidents. An accident that links you to a vast criminal enterprise? You met his gaze, unflinching. That's a lot of paperwork to explain away. You pulled a small, encrypted data stick from your pocket, quickly initiating a download from the terminal. The bar crawled agonizingly slow across the bottom of the screen. You reacted on instinct, a practiced pivot, a sharp elbow to his midsection that sent him stumbling back, gasping. The other officer hesitated, drawing his sidearm. Don't be a fool, you snarled, your eyes locked on the commanding officer, who now held a pistol, its muzzle glinting under the harsh light. This data is already being mirrored. You think you can make it vanish? It's too late. A lie, but a necessary one. The download was still only at 30%. The commanding officer's finger tightened on the trigger. You're a dead man, Reid. You lunged, not for him, but for the table, overturning it with a crash that echoed through the small office. The sudden noise, the clatter of metal and wood, bought you a precious second. A shot rang out, tearing through the air where your head had been. Splinters rained down. You dove for the ground, rolling under the desk, the data stick still clutched in your hand, the download bar now nearing 50%. Footsteps pounded outside the office, drawn by the gunshot. More officers. You were surrounded. Don't let him leave with that data. Another shot, closer this time, ripped through the desk's thin paneling. You could feel the pressure of the impending capture, the certainty of betrayal closing in. Your eyes flicked to the screen. 90%. You had to move. With a surge of adrenaline, you burst from beneath the desk, a human projectile, slamming into the commanding officer, knocking the gun from his grasp. It skittered across the floor. You didn't wait, didn't engage. The data stick was now glowing green, the download complete. The other officers were on you in an instant, a flurry of fists and grappling. You fought with a desperate ferocity, a primal need to escape, to protect the evidence. A heavy blow landed on your temple, stars exploding behind your eyes. Your knees buckled, but you maintained your grip, your focus. You saw an opening, a narrow gap in the bodies, and you twisted, broke free, sprinting towards the main entrance. Behind you, shouts, the scramble of heavy boots. You fumbled with the keys, your hands slick with sweat and something else. A searing pain bloomed in your side, a grazing shot, a warning. You started the engine, the roar a defiant challenge to the rising sun. The true architects, you realized, were closer than you ever dared to imagine. A human whirlwind. You lunged, not for an exit, but for the open server rack, a metal skeleton humming with illicit secrets. The air fractured with another report, hot leads singing past your ear, a whisper of imminent death. 100%. The data, raw and damning, was free, streaming into the digital ether, a truth bomb detonating across secure channels. You fool! The orchestrator's voice, a whipcrack of fury, sliced through the frantic hum of the server room. You twisted, rolling behind a stack of dusty equipment manuals, the cheap paper scattering like startled birds. The impact of the next shot splintered the concrete wall above you, showering you with fine dust. The precipice. It changes everything, you rasped, the words thick with grit and resolve. It exposes the rot. The names. The routes. The silent partners. You heard the metallic scrape of his shoe on the polished linoleum floor, the slow, deliberate footsteps closing in. He wasn't rushing. He was savoring the hunt. This sterile, functional space, designed for observation and control, was now a tomb. Indifferent emptiness outside. A dead man's confession, the orchestrator scoffed, his voice closer now, dangerously calm. Who will believe a desperate detective? You gripped the small. Your eyes darted around, searching for an edge, a distraction. The data was out. That was the victory. Now, survival. You remembered the last time you felt this helpless, this cornered. Years ago. A phone call that ended abruptly. Your sister's face, vibrant and laughing, flashed behind your eyes. This wasn't her ghost, not today. This was for her. The bank transfers. The coded ledgers. The satellite images. The orchestrator laughed, a dry, humorless sound that scraped like bone on stone. You always were too sentimental, Reid. Too focused on the past. That's why you failed to protect what mattered most. The word struck you like a physical blow, a calculated jab at the oldest, deepest wound. Your grip tightened on the wrench, knuckles white. He knew. He always knew. This wasn't just about the Enterprise, it was personal. He was using your sister's disappearance as a weapon, a final, cruel twist of the knife. Footsteps, heavy and urgent, echoed down the corridor. Multiple voices, sharp with authority. Federal agents. Drop your weapon. The orchestrator cursed, a guttural sound of pure frustration. His focus, momentarily broken, gave you the opening. With a roar that surprised even yourself, you burst from cover, wrench raised. He fired, the shot tearing through the air where you'd been a heartbeat before. You tackled him low, a desperate, clumsy lunge that sent both of you crashing to the grimy floor. The weapon skittered away, sliding under a heavy filing cabinet. The air was knocked from your lungs as you landed, but the shock was quickly replaced by a surge of adrenaline. It's over, you gasped, struggling against his surprising strength. His face, contorted in a mask of pure hatred, was inches from yours. It's never over, Reid, he snarled, a desperate glint in his eyes. There are always others. Always a new path. But the heavy boots were already pounding into the server room. A border agent, weapon raised, stood over you both, his face grim. Behind him, another agent, and then a familiar colleague, his expression a mix of relief and grim determination. The orchestrator's struggle faltered, then ceased. As the agents moved in, securing him, you pushed yourself up, gasping, every muscle screaming in protest. The wrench fell from your hand, clattering against the linoleum. Not the tense, predatory quiet of the hunt, but the heavy, almost reverent hush of consequence. You looked at the orchestrator, now cuffed and subdued, then out towards the vast, pale expanse of the desert through the station's high windows. The sun, a brutal orange orb, was beginning its descent. The ghosts of the past, for a moment, felt a little less potent, a little less consuming. The battle was won, the truth revealed. The long, slow process of healing, for the city and for you, had just begun. The heavy boots ceased their frantic rhythm. The orchestrator, a man whose ambition had carved a labyrinth of deceit, now lay prone, his face pressed against the cold metal floor of the server room. A border agent, a silhouette against the stark, utilitarian lights, kept a weapon trained on him, a silent sentinel. Your colleague, his breath ragged but his eyes sharp with a familiar light, knelt beside you, a hand steadying your shoulder. "Reid," he murmured, his voice a low rumble, "you did it." The words felt hollow, a chime in a vast, empty chamber. The dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the harsh glow, each particle a tiny world reflecting the chaos you had just navigated. You pushed yourself up, the ache in your ribs a dull throb, a constant reminder of the physical cost. Your gaze swept across the room, taking in the blinking lights of the servers, the tangle of wires, the digital heart of a monstrous operation now silenced. The orchestrator was cuffed, his wrists bound behind him with a clinical efficiency. Two more border agents moved with practiced ease, their movements precise, their faces unreadable masks of duty. They lifted him, a dead weight of shattered pride and exposed malice. It was a look that promised echoes, not surrender. You followed them out, the desert air, cool and crisp, a stark contrast to the stale, charged atmosphere of the server room. Vehicles were parked in neat rows, their tires kicked up fine sand. The night sky above was a velvet canvas, vast and indifferent, studded with indifferent stars. The debriefing was a blur of questions and answers, a replaying of the last frantic hours. Your colleague sat beside you, occasionally interjecting, filling in gaps, corroborating your account. You spoke of the low-level dealer, a pawn in a game far grander than anyone had suspected, his death a mere ripple in a meticulously planned scheme. The senior border agent, a woman with eyes that had seen too much desert sun and too many desperate faces. Listened intently, him pen scratching across a pad. "This goes deep, Reid," he stated, his voice gravelly, "deeper than just a few bad apples." You nodded. The fatigue a heavy cloak settling around your shoulders. It reaches the top. City Hall, the Port Authority. The very foundations. The orchestrator was being held in an interrogation room nearby. The initial victory, the adrenaline-fueled triumph, had begun to recede, replaced by a profound weariness. Justice, you realized, was a ravenous beast, and its feast often left behind more bones than meat. The silence was profound, broken only by the whisper of the wind carrying the scent of dust and distant creosote. Your colleague joined you, offering a steaming mug of lukewarm coffee. "They're going to sweep this clean," he said, his voice low, "the public needs to see a victory. But you know as well as I do, the roots." You took a slow sip, the bitter taste a perfect mirror to your thoughts. "The roots go deeper than what we pulled up tonight." But it had sharpened something within you, a resolve forged in the fires of this brutal pursuit. You had exposed a network that had thrived in the city's blind spots, a corrosive influence that had eaten away at its integrity. The relief was not a joyous burst, but a quiet, steadying presence, like a hand pressed against a wound. "What now, Reid?" your colleague asked, his gaze fixed on the rising sun. The fight wasn't over. Not truly. This victory, hard-won and heavy with loss, was not an ending. It was a beginning. A new purpose, clearer and sharper than before, began to solidify within you. The scars would remain, etched into your spirit, but they would serve as a reminder, not a hindrance. The city, perhaps, could breathe a little easier tonight. But you knew the Hydra had more heads, and the desert held secrets still waiting for the sun to reveal.